it is with great respect and honor that I am here to introduce Henry Bismuth tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, welcome. First, I would like to thank Dr. Ali Nazara, our associate Dr. Dong, and the Confucius Institute for inviting me to speak here today. In my presentation, I would like to share with you the links the Silk Road provided to the paintings of my series, The Alchemy of Images, and why it's so important to me. Asian art became part of my life when I was 11 years old. I started drawing particularly Native American Indian horses as a child of 3, and to remain till this day a subject that is still very important in my life. My love for art was with my father. Although he was a doctor at art, he was an artist. So he was a doctor, he was an artist at heart. And he enjoyed sharing his passion with me. So on weekends, he was taking me in various museums in Paris where I was born and raised. My first connection with art was really with Japanese block prints and ukiyo-e. And afterwards, I was saving, I started to save my allowance for buying books in the subject. But school intervened, and it was a tradition in my family for men and women to be doctors. So they expected me to attend medical school, and I did. For which I'm grateful because it gave me a very in-depth knowledge of anatomy and human figure. I stayed 5 years in medical school. I knew it was not my life work and I had to leave. I was not meant, I guess, to cure the body, but maybe to heal the soul with the work. I needed to draw. That was my passion. I studied the masters at museums in Paris, in London, in Italy, as well as in the United States. I would spend hours in front of one painting sometimes when I was going to a museum. And I had no restriction whatsoever because I never attended art school. My first shows were Kabuki actors, but they were just the beginning. Everything that came into my life became father, and most importantly, ancient Asian artifacts. I began painting Buddhas, only 4, when I was in Paris and until I relocated in New York in 2010. They appealed to me as an artist because of the objects they are, but also written as a kind of representation of the human being. Skulls, logs and trees, corvids and nudes were part of the subject as well. Once in New York, I had the artistic license to start new, to start afresh. My first show was during Art Basel Miami Week, and I included for the first time paintings with Asian-related subjects, but I interpreted them in my own way. These paintings were of disparate images. There was no coherence in them until April 2014. This is when the wife of a Chinese official that we have known from the UN came to the house for dinner and brought with her one of China's leading sculptresses. This lady had just done 8 monumental sculptures for the UK Olympics. Coincidentally, I'm sorry I didn't tell you that the sculptures were about polo players, and you will understand why. Coincidentally, the very same day, I had placed in the dining room fireplace mantel a painting, my first painting of Chinese polo players from the Tang Dynasty. It's a place where I was putting always the new paintings because that's where I could study them. That's where I could see if I needed to change something. The subsequent conversation Our dinner, with a short adjournment to due other of my work, gave birth of actually the series, The Alchemy of Images. Sure. Do you hear me? Okay, I'll do it like this. I'm not used to that. So that was the beginning of the series, The Alchemy of Images, and it was a linkage I was seeking up until now. I think it's much better, right? The Silk Road was a network of trade routes which attracted travelers not only for trade, but for the intellectual and cultural exchange that was taking place in the city along the way. Science, art, and literature, crafts, and technologies were shared, and in this way, languages, religions, and culture developed, influencing one another. Political and economic relations were established between the civilization of China, the subcontinent of India, Asia, Persia, Arabia, Europe, as well as the Horn of Africa. The Silk Road was formally established during the Han Dynasty, a period when China's focused on securing its borders, as well as on the expansion. But to do so, they needed not the small, pony-like breed of horses they had, but they needed the larger horses with greater stamina and speed that could carry armor and armor-clad cavalrymen. You see this in Red Rider. This painting is about beauty, strength, freedom, and nobility. This horse stands strong at attention. His nostrils are flared, his mouth is open, and he is breathing air and motion. He wears magnificent regalia, including a red and white striped neck guard. The white in the background that surrounds the horse and the rider is basically to focus on them and not to any other detail. It's to focus on this minky, a small sculptural representation of the actual horse entombed with the deceased to provide him in the afterlife. Two of a kind, gives voice to this history as it bears witness of two forces, the Chinese and the nomadic, opposing one another, each in its unique uniform of different coloration, though of similar stylization, and each with a different breed of horses of different regalia. The white one on the left is definitely a Han horse. The second on the right is Native American Pinto horse. I've chosen to show this painting just for you to realize the artistic license that is mine as an artist to adapt, transform, and to create something new from something pre-existing. Maintaining communication with distant provinces was key for China's expansion. The horse was on the road again. As it travels the Silk Road, he is followed by merchants and missionaries, politicians, and others. There is safety in numbers. He knows to beware. Then it was to beware of marauders and other thieves. Each painting is ultimately about how I can juxtapose something from the present with something from the past. Here we have a Han horse as well as a rider from another type, another sort, on a crossing road in Bedford, New York, warning drivers to be alert. By the time of the Tang Dynasty, it was a time of peace. China was at its apex. Horses were for entertainment, pleasure, and recreation. Horses were for entertainment, pleasure, and recreation, not for war or for competition. There are various theories of how polo was introduced to China. The one that is the most recognized is by the nomadic tribes, the Xambe tribes, who used as a training ground for the cavalry to gain equestrian skills. They controlled the northern part of China from the 4th to the 6th century. Their fondness for horses, which they bred in the steppe of the north, was inherited afterwards by the founders of the Tang Dynasty. Aristocratic families of the northwest and from the northern and western borders with whom they intermarried. The Xambes themselves accorded higher status and more physical freedom to women than the Chinese. The women, particularly of the upper classes, played polo and hunted alongside men. They were dressed in Western garb, tunics, trousers and boots, and rode astride with men, like you can see in this painting, Cloud Riders. 4 women and 1 apparently riderless horse. Layer by layer, dramatic color by dramatic colors, the clouds appear to rise from the earth, creating a light show. The red cloud giving way to the gold, and the gold to the black, and so forth. Are the women celebrating their leisure, welcoming the new dawn? Or I'm just reinvigorating them, remembering a friend who had for years her own polo team in Argentina and was the first female polo playing member in the polo club in Paris. Though only women are playing polo in Cloud Riders. Remember the sculptures I mentioned before who visited our home. Our series included 8 sculptures, 3 of the Tang Dynasty, the Emperor and the Queen Concubine, 3 women polo players, and 3 current English polo players. This was an egalitarian sport, although it's often referred as the Emperors of Game and the sport of kings. Polo was an important diplomatic activity, often played in Shanghai, not only China's, but the world's largest and most cosmopolitan city. It attracted merchants, scholars, players, and envoys from Arabia, Persia, India, Korea, and Japan. Traveling along the Silk Road, the traders wanted to practice their own faith, subsequently building their own religion and of their own religion's temple and shrines along the way. They were followed by missionaries of many faiths, though Buddhism, imported from northern India, from Pakistan and Afghanistan, was by far the first of the great missionary faiths to take advantage of this mobility. Buddhist heavenly kings, also called guardians, were enthroned with Chinese noblemen to protect their spirit from evil forces. In swimming over the guardians, one guardian has a foot on top of a deer, the head of a deer, and on its head he has the head of a phoenix, a mythological bird that lived for over 500 years, consuming itself in fire and then rose from the ashes to live again. The other guardian on the left has a foot between the curved horn of the water buffalo. The deer on the right is a symbol of longevity. The buffalo on the left is a symbol of opulence. The title of this painting came even before I put the first brushstroke on this canvas. At first I envisioned 3 eels swimming over the guardians, but for 1 year I kept changing them all the time, and I couldn't like what I was doing. I was never satisfied. Until one day I had an epiphany. 3 snake-like fish opposing 2 corpulent figures really didn't work. So it had to be one single fish, and I created my own. Fish have symbolic reference within various forms of spirituality and various both in Eastern and Western. In Buddhism, the fish symbolizes happiness and freedom. In Christianity,